Hello, everybody. This is Dieter Kalt, and you're listening to episode 9 of season 1. This is part 1 of an epic interview with Pierre Beaulieu, the Canadian coach. And today's episode is really interesting because it's a lot about positive attitude, about the importance of life skills, and how to get credibility and respect. So this is really interesting for everyone, but especially also for young people in the audience. Lots to learn, lots of info, lots of insight. So sit back, enjoy, have a coffee, have a beer, and let's do this. 3, 2, 1, go. Hello everybody, I am Dieter Kalt and you're listening to 74 Once More, a show for people who are passionate about coaching, who are teachers, mentors, leaders, and love to assist others to succeed. So do you listen? Do you want to listen to amazing stories and learn from the experience of extraordinary people who have been there and done that? Stories about experiencing victories, but also about the struggle to overcome one's deepest fears and most challenging resistance and self-doubt. Then in the right place, because today's guest is a very special person to me. We met 2010 in Klagenfurt, Austria, while I was still playing professional hockey, and he started his first pro season in Europe as a goalie coach and video coach. And in 2012, we both started working together in the coaching staff and ended up winning our first national title as coaches together, something that I will never forget my entire life. And the person I'm talking about is one of the most passionate and positive persons I've ever met in pro sports, with a thirst for knowledge that just makes him better and better at what he does every day. After working in Europe for the past 9 years, he's currently working for the Krefeld Penguins in the Deutsche Eishockey League at the DEL. Pierre Beaulieu, it's a real pleasure to have you on my show. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Pleasure to be here. And feelings are mutual. We had a great run that year in 2012, and that 2013 championship there was something I'll hold dear to my heart for the rest of my life as well.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it a little bit, and not about everything. Some things have to stay secret for sure. But it was a mind-blowing time for me as well. But since that time just flew by, it seems, and you have been gathering a lot of experience, not only in Klagenfurt, because you moved on in coaching to different clubs ever since. But, to start this conversation with, not only did you take a national title in Klagenfurt, but you also met a very special person, your soon-to-be wife, Ines. So my first question will be, how are the marriage preparations coming along?
Really good. I think we're at the tail end of things. So we're, Lago di Garda expects the whole crew over there first week of July. So it's going to be fun. The North Americans are really looking forward to it. The Austrians and those coming from other parts of Europe and around the world are also looking forward to it, and as are we. So it's going to be a great week, a good festive time, and it's going to be obviously another day that I'll never forget.
Yes, for sure. And I hope I can be there for that day as well, and we have some fun together. But let's take it back to your beginning. Now you have been working internationally for many years, and that's a special experience. And now you're even marrying an Austrian girl. You might never get back to live in Canada, in Timmins again. You never know. But tell me a little bit about your beginning in hockey. How you got to be a hockey player, and why your career didn't go that long, and it was a conscious choice to end your career as a player after spending a couple of years in university, or was it something you were forced to?
Going back to answer the first part of the question, hockey, obviously growing up in small town Canada, Northern Ontario, not much to do there in winter other than play the great Canadian games. So I took to it at a very young age. My parents were obviously very important in that and supported me all the way through. So started playing goal probably around 8 years old, and took to that right away, and really found I was passionate about it. I enjoyed the position. I enjoyed what it brought. It just made me happy. And I pursued that for as long as I could through 5 years of junior hockey, and then a career in Canadian university hockey for 4 years. After which didn't really get, it was more or less not really my choice. It was one of those things where the goaltending position is so competitive, and I had done everything that I could and worked as hard as I could to try and establish myself and create opportunities for myself, but nothing came. So it was on to the next chapter, and didn't really know what that was going to be at the time, but luckily I had established some very good relationships in coaching from the time that I was about 19 or 20. And had begun coaching goaltending schools, different parts of the United States, Canada, and around the world, in Europe. And was fortunate enough to make some really good contacts there that eventually led me to my position in Europe, in Klagenfurt.
So, you have to imagine growing up in Canada and wanting to be a hockey player. That's the dream of many boys. I had the same kind of dreams, but then there comes a time when some things you can influence and some things you can't influence, where this dream has to stop, and you have to realize that you have to take the next step. And this is where a lot of kids, not nowadays, but also back then, were struggling, but you were able to transform that love for the sport into coaching. Tell me a little bit about that, because I want to understand the mindset and give our listeners, because there's also young listeners interested who are in sports and who might be facing the same kind of difficulties, how to handle this kind of mental pressure.
Yeah, I think, of course, and I can't say that those pressures were not put on me by myself, because I wanted to achieve that ultimate goal of playing at the highest level, so that being the National Hockey League. And you pursue those dreams, and you place that pressure on yourself, which for me, my personality ended up being a little bit crippling, actually, creating a lot of anxieties in my life, and a lot of failed opportunities, which were to some extent out of my control. And I didn't understand that for a long time. I thought that if you were really passionate and you worked as hard as you could and you outworked other people, that eventually you would get rewarded. And that never did happen for me. But it took some time for me to understand what goes into it, and coming at it from a totally different perspective now, coaching in professional sports and hockey specifically, you tend to evaluate things much differently, and it sheds light on what that process looks like when you're talking about scouting and evaluating players and criterias and character traits that you look to fill specific positions on any given team. So it's there's no doubt that was throughout my junior career, especially. I had a hard time with some of the letdowns that I had, but all the way through, just a lot of perseverance and continued to stay true to who I was as a person, which was work ethic and passion, and making sure that I was good to people, and that actually led me to what I didn't really know at the time. At the time, I thought it was basically just a summer job, coaching goalie schools. I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I was able to just create and fortify really good relationships and friendships through coaching at a young age. And those relationships led to what is now my full-time career. So it's, and I was able to parlay those into something that obviously is near and dear to my heart, and staying in the game.
So, but you said a lot of things already that I'm really interested in, and I have to dig into those a little bit. But it sounds like this whole process, you have been working with yourself a lot. How you got to know yourself through all those difficulties that you had to face, and especially when you're young, when you play junior hockey, and you really have to understand that there's a totally different system in North America than it is in Europe. Yes. Where I don't know if it was the same with you. You probably had to leave home quite early to play junior hockey on the highest level, right?
Yeah, left when I was 16.
seldom the case here in Europe. So, but what does that mean for kids that age leaving home? Did you have a lot of bad things can happen during that time, puberty, growing up, all those anxieties you're talking about. Not everybody gets to have this kind of positive attitude and mentality that you develop. So that's quite special. What helped you in that way? Did you have special people taking care of you? Did you have a mentor growing up, that helped you through that phase?
Well, I think obviously upbringing is huge. The values and morals that you are taught as a young kid. If you value achieving goals and your parents emphasize, being a good person and, not necessarily pushing the envelope and having too much fun, and doing things where there's a structure and time management skills are taught and those kind of things, then that transition in those situations become a lot easier. And I'm fortunate to have had that growing up. I was given a lot of mentorship and tutelage from my parents and life skills. Secondly, I was lucky enough to live in some great family homes when I lived away from home. It's not always the case, and I can speak to several situations where some of my teammates didn't have the same type of experiences as I did, but I still hold a lot of those relationships near and dear to my heart, and still speak with those families and those billets, we call them in North America. And they obviously had a really big part of easing that tension and making you feel comfortable, and not at a young age where you're not necessarily at home or in an environment that's completely new.
So you felt like you were prepared to take all those steps, but you think that's a structural problem in youth sports, that getting prepared for life, kind of, rather than only for the sport itself, but all the implication that becoming a professional in something has.
I believe so. I think you're spot on there. I think there's a lot of life skills that are lost in the process of developing athletes. I think you see it in hockey every day. I can speak to it in my environment now, that a lot of the men that we get at the pro level, guys that are in their late 20s, early 30s even, that they lack a certain maturity, or they lack they have certain expectations where they've been coddled, or they're not capable of doing everyday mundane tasks because it's always been done for them, or they show no interest in it and expect other people to do it. So I think that's definitely something where along the way, no matter to what level an athlete's skill set is, there are certain things that as a society we owe it to that person to continue their development, not only just cater to them because they're a special athlete.
Yeah, I think that will be a topic for another podcast. The title that we have to talk about for a couple more hours. Becoming a professional in life and redefining what means successful youth development. That's a topic that's very dear to my heart. But with you, so you started with the coaching summertime, getting a taste of it. How did you get the chance to start professional coaching overseas in Europe right away, which is, it's not an easy step to take, especially not in coaching. And you were a young guy too. And then you started your first professional task, not only coaching two professional goaltenders of 3 adults, but also working with the kids. Tell me a little bit about that first experience here in Europe.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, even before taking that first position in Klagenfurt in 2010, season 2010 and 11, I had the opportunity through those contacts that I mentioned to not only establish myself as a goaltending coach, but to work with some video and different tools related to video that would allow me to bolster my resume, which ended up being one of the reasons why I was a good candidate for that job. But you know what? It all comes down to networking, and I had contacts that put me in touch with people who had development programs, the Austrian Federation, and I was able to come over and take advantage of that opportunity, which in the end led me to create some good friendships and fortify some professional relationships, which then led to this position in Klagenfurt. So that's how I got there. That first experience of coaching at, I think I was 26 years old at the time. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, our two professional goaltenders at the time, Andy Kyoto, the veteran, if I can call him that at the time, he was 26. We were the same age, both born 83. So it was obviously a big learning curve. I had never worked. I didn't come from professional sports, as many coaches who coach at this level often do. And for me, it was there was a lot of listening. There was some humbling experiences in the first few years, no doubt. But again, just my approach to everyday life, I believe you touched on it in the intro there, and paid me a good compliment. I've always been somebody who's been passionate about learning, and I went into that with that in mind. And I have to say that Andy was had been playing pro for almost 8 years, I think, at the time. So you allow yourself to find your way as a coach in what you want to be, what your identity will be as a coach. And I found myself really open to anything in those few years. I threw myself into it. Everything that I could read, I read. Every video I could watch, I watched. Anytime I could listen to an intelligent conversation, I listened to it, and I actively listened. I just didn't, pick up on just a few things. I really dove into it, and then found myself really thanking and being grateful for the opportunity, and that just led to even more of a passion for it.
Well, I really love to talk with you about this, your career path, because, in my mind, we're going to talk about it a little later too, but you're climbing the ladder now pretty fast, because it's not usual. First of all, you have been playing on a special position that needs, total different elements than being a forward, for example, in that sport, or being a defenseman. Mm-hmm. So, and what you see a lot of times is that not every goaltender understands the game, because he's really focused about his, he's pretty much playing a single man's game in many aspects, especially mentally, totally different in physical preparation and mental preparation many times. But you did go that way, from being responsible for the goaltenders and working on the video, but really becoming like a student of the game and a master of the game. And now, next step will be a head coaching job in one of the highest, I'm sure about that, in one of the highest professional leagues in Europe. And God knows where it all goes. And I really love your story, because you just said, you don't have that huge career as a player, that kind of background, that kind of lobby, where that, when I started in coaching, for example, is, I had this big career as a player. Yep. So I had the education, yes, but I had the respect from the community, because I was this kind of player and this kind of person. But that didn't mean that I'm going to be a good coach by any means. Vice versa, you didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And you worked your way up by being a student of the game and, going through the grind, and I really want to talk about the respect. Did you feel, because that's huge. And you started working with professionals. Did you feel intimidated when you started working in that environment, getting the respect from the pro players? And tell me about that. And then when you got it, how did you get it?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And I think it's very applicable. I went into it knowing that I had to establish credibility. I think credibility today is too often not something that people think about before they speak, before they give some advice, before they try and before they try and influence someone or something. I think people too often speak before they try and work through establishing credibility. And that was something that I had looked at. I had gotten some good advice from some coaches that I had worked with back in North America, had coached in the National Hockey League and other leagues, and had given me that advice. Go into it and establish credibility before you start telling people what to do. And once you've established credibility and you've proven to others around you, whether they're fellow coaches, whether they're players or specifically goaltenders at that time in my career, when they know that you not only know what you're talking about, but you're a good person and you'll have their back and that you're trustworthy, then everything's just going to start to steamroll for you. And I really took that really took to me because, as I said earlier, it's just too often I think there's just not enough emphasis on that. And once you have that credibility, then of course you then build relationships. And once those relationships are built, then you just work on fortifying them and really trying to influence those people, and then really starting to get to know what makes them tick and how you can influence their career, whether it be through just supporting the human being or, okay, we've identified things from an athletic standpoint that we need to make adjustments on.
So there are so many aspects to coaching, and you have a couple of years under your belt now, where I have to say one of my older mentors, he used to be working for the Austrian Federation and the Austrian national team, like a big name in hockey, Alpo Suhonen. He said, once you're coaching like 40 years, you can call yourself a coach, or you have the experience you need. Well, I hope, because you better learn fast, nowadays. Otherwise, you're going to be out of the business pretty quick. But in your experience, what makes a good coach nowadays? What kind of coach do you want to be?
For me, I think the biggest thing is obviously having a vision. Is one of the things that to me is imperative. Too many coaches today, whether they're young coaches or coaches that are working in levels below the ones that I have had experience in, too often time there's no vision. There's no established culture. And I think you should, as a coach, you should never be afraid to get your hands dirty. Whether you're the head coach, whether you're the assistant coach, whether you're the general manager, if you need to be the one sweeping the locker room, then you can do it. Because in the end, all those little things, if you're going to prove to your players and your fellow colleagues that you're willing to go the extra mile for them, and at the end of the day, that breeds a lot of confidence and a lot of trust and galvanizes people. So I'm a big believer in that culture, making sure that you establish a culture, have a clear vision and a good plan. Being a great communicator, of course, is something that's I take pride on and something I work on all the time, whether it's learning new skills, new communication skills, or whether it's, how to deliver a message a little bit clearer, how to speak to a group, how to navigate and work with the individuals. Because in today's game, the people that play in today's modern game, you need to work with those individuals. The days are long gone of the yelling and screaming and the fear factor motivator. Those days are dead. And I think if you still have that approach, I say that's not the right one, but for me, it's about communication and really working with people and finding out what makes them tick and where they want to be, and then coming up with a plan to get them there. Because if you can invest in them, they'll invest in you, and that'll create an unbelievable culture.
Well, so coaching did change, culture did change, and if I can sum it up, if you want to stay at that road, that I'm the boss, and if I say jump, you jump too. That only will get you so far nowadays before somebody tells you just to, get lost, or they stop listening to you.
Yes.
So that's that creating a connection or taking care of caring for the players. Is that something that is respected or that players need nowadays more than before?
No doubt about that. I think that's you're spot on. I think I alluded to it a little bit before, that really communicating and finding out what makes the individuals tick and what motivates them. I think that falls under the caring aspect. I think as a coach, there has to be boundaries, and obviously you need to be someone who, as the leader of the group, you need to be someone that carries himself in a certain way. So you cannot be best friends with your players, but at the same time, I think that's a fine line, and your players need to know that at any given time they can call on you and you'll be ready to support them with whatever it is they're going through. Because at the end of the day, they're just human beings. Although they work and perform in an environment that's high stress and very much goal oriented, it's, what have you done for me lately? But at the same time, these are human beings. And if the human being feels good and feels confident and feels like he's in an environment where he can be himself, you're going to get the best out of that person. So I think that's a huge part of coaching as well.
Well, there's always this kind of talk, and I've been asking you those questions too. It's a lot of talk about getting the best out of the athletes, taking care of the athletes, their families, and I have the same kind of, and that we think alike in many ways. And I like to see the Scandinavian approach to working with pro athletes, at least that I got to know when I played in Sweden, is the one that's most fun. But it's for me, treating everybody to be part of something that you're building together. Everybody has ownership. At the same time, it's pretty stressful at times, when there comes, and it's the same as a parent, and you will find that out pretty soon too, Pierre. Sometimes
that's the plan.
You would just like to say, why we have to do it like this? Yeah, well, just because I say so. That's sometimes, but it doesn't work that way. And so communication, you said it, is really important. Mm-hmm. But it's always about the athletes. What about the coaches? Where do the coaches get counseling or coaching? That would be huge in this kind of pressure. Players have to deal with pressure. They might lose their job if they don't perform. That's the nature of the business. But even more so, coaches who are, sometimes you're just a passenger. You like to steer the bus, but you feel that way, that sometimes you're a passenger. And where do you get your counseling, and where do you get your feedback?
Well, I think having a supporting wife is step number one. I mean, somebody you can bounce some ideas off of, and somebody you can vent with. It's not always just about trying to get a solution. It's sometimes you just got to come home and vent a little bit. So I think it starts there. And like anything else, I think a really good, strong support network, however you extend that, whether it's fellow coaches, myself, I have that, and I have great friends and people in hockey and in sports that I can rely on. I think there's other tools. For example, I'm someone that, as part of my ambition, I look for other ways to learn and resources to tap into. And I was able to do some executive coaching with someone that became quite close to me and was able to be a great support network in TC Cummings. And, those are some of the resources that are out there as well. And I think just being able to have that network of people that no matter what, if you're feeling there's always someone that you can reach out to, whether it's somebody who's in the sport. I'm also lucky to have a very close group of friends back home that we still keep in touch a lot and talk. And sometimes it's just about having a laugh and reminiscing about some funny things from the past. And you can have that release that you feel you need. But I think that just extending, keeping relationships alive for as long as you can, and making sure that you have that network.
So you mentioned TC Cummings, and that's kind of the self-growth work you were doing, and you keep on doing. When did you start realizing that this kind of work is going to be helpful for you, that you needed? Was there a special, like, aha moment in your life that changed the way you thought about life and things, and made you change the path you're on?
Well, I think for me specifically with TC, it was an introductory thing. We excuse me, we had a common friend who put us in touch. And when I spoke with TC, it was one of those things where you instant chemistry, and somebody who you can relate to, and somebody who understands what you're going through and what kind of career path you're on. And not only can it help you on a professional standpoint, but it can also help you, as I just touched on, overcome some of the barriers and boundaries that you have in your personal life, whether they stem from work or just in keeping things in perspective in everyday life.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. So please give me some feedback, share the links with your friends, and hit subscribe on iTunes. Part 2 of this interview is coming up really soon. You can also follow me on Instagram. Just look for hashtag 74once more, or on Facebook at 74once more. We get behind the scenes material and a lot more info about this whole project. So please support me on this mission. Share, like, subscribe. I'm also offering free coaching calls for anyone who wants to learn from experience of a guy with 40 years in the professional high-performance sports business. So if you're looking for advice about topics related to youth sports, mentoring, or team-related issues, don't be shy. Book a time, book a slot, have a free coaching call. I'd be happy to assist. So stay tuned and no regrets, guys.